Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here, and I know a lot of you guys have been feeling the concern regarding the recent earthquakes that have been hitting California, like the Ridgecrest earthquake, especially the 7.1, which I believe was the biggest in 20 years. I know I felt it. I know a lot of people felt it. I was sitting next to a swimming pool at the time with, well, you guessed it, Jeff Berwick of the Dollar Vigilante, among a few other people, a few friends. And we were having dinner, and it just starts shaking like crazy. And, I think 2 days later, I woke up to like a 4.5 or something in bed at about 8 in the morning and went back to sleep. But a lot of people are on edge, and it is crazy when you actually consider the magnitude of these earthquakes. And a lot of people are wondering, what's next? Are we in for the big one? And the answer, well, the answer is, as per usual, no one really completely knows. You can see this video here. It's just absolutely incredible of the swimming pool. And I was next to a swimming pool at the time. You could see the waves in the pool, but not like that. That's over the top. But anyway, again, it's rightly scares a lot of people. Are we in for the big one in places like LA, etc.? We don't know, but I mean, we are seeing this move from, around the Death Valley region of California towards the San Andreas Fault. You could see this USGS map here that shows the major earthquakes over the last little while. And they're showing it in kilometers for some reason, even though it's a USGS. I guess that's just what they go by. Anyway, as this article here says, San Andreas Fault locked, loaded, and ready to roll with big earthquake, expert says. And as this article goes into, Southern California's section of the San Andreas Fault is locked, loaded, and ready to roll, leading earthquake scientists said Wednesday at the National Earthquake Conference in Long Beach. The San Andreas Fault is one of California's most dangerous and is the state's longest fault. Yet, for Southern California, the last big earthquake to strike the southern San Andreas was in 1857, when a magnitude 7.9 earthquake ruptured and an astonishing 185 miles between Monterey County and San Gabriel Mountains near Los Angeles. It has been quiet since then. Too quiet, said Thomas Jordan, director of the Southern California Earthquake Center. Now, I do look at a lot of this stuff and go, okay, all right, fear-mongering, that's what runs media, that's what keeps media alive, like the Los Angeles Times and these other major mainstream medias. And look, when it comes down to it, whether it happens or not, eventually it's going to happen. But to live in fear is ridiculous, and we're going to go into that a bit more later. But we do know, going back, that there is a very real risk of an earthquake along the San Andreas Fault. And, of course, you're looking at Yellowstone. People have been talking about how that's going to blow up for years. We did a report a couple years ago at Old Faithful in Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming about the coming supervolcano. But what are we going to do about it? Scream and cry and say we're all going to die? No. But going back to like San Francisco, 1906, for example, absolutely crazy earthquake. If anyone's ever seen the silent film footage, I really encourage people to look it up. It's before and after footage of San Francisco, and it just shows the magnitude. But that was in a time when people were far more independent. So now, I mean, we saw what happened in the 80s in San Francisco as well, but I mean, now it's a much different story, how people will react to such a situation. I mean, look at this. Out of KTLA 5, as it says, Ridgecrest quake packed the power of 45 nuclear bombs, but its impact was muted. I have to ask, what kind of nuclear bombs? Well, the kind that fell on Hiroshima. So obviously a massive radius that could affect. I mean, the Hiroshima bomb affected everything within a 1 mile radius and desecrated it. Obviously, it affected things outside of that, but within the 1 mile, it just completely destroyed and flattened everything. So 45 times that, do the math, obviously, with some leeway for the fact that after it'll start to teeter off as it gets further and further away from the core of the blast. That would be around 45 miles, obviously. But as this article says, when the magnitude 7.1 earthquake ruptured the earth in the Mojave Desert, It packed the energy of 45 nuclear bombs of the type that fell on Hiroshima, but a variety of factors lessened the potency impact of what was the most powerful Southern California earthquake in nearly 2 decades. The massive temblor, it's important to note, ruptured on a fault whose northwest-southeast direction pushed the worst shaking away from populated areas. The area Ridgecrest sits in is riddled with faults in the Eastern California shear zone that have produced some of the state's biggest quakes in the modern record, like the magnitude 7.5 Owens Valley earthquake in 1872 and the magnitude 7.3 Landers earthquake in 1992. So obviously, you could see this massive area, and it shows. As it says here, these Planet Labs Inc.'s satellite images provided to CNN show a crack that formed in the area close to the epicenter. That's crazy. I mean, look at the size of that and look at how much it changes the surrounding land. And we have to remember we're on a gigantic fire lava ball, though I know the flat earthers, cue the flat earthers. But anyway, we're on a magma ball shooting through space. It's ridiculous, the idea that we're even able to live on this Earth in the first place. And there's a lot of factors that play into this. The quake to make Los Angeles a radioactive dead zone, as this article said, had the previous Friday 7.1 earthquake and other ongoing seismic shocks hit less than 200 miles northwest of Ridgecrest, China Lake, 10 million people in Los Angeles would now be under an apocalyptic cloud, their lives and those of the state and nation in radioactive ruin. The likely human death toll would be in the millions. The likely property loss would be in the trillions. The forever damage to our species, food supply, ecological support systems, and long-term economy would be very far beyond any meaningful calculation. Actually, I don't think you can mess up our economy any more than it already is. But anyway, carrying on. The threat to the ability of the human race to survive on this planet would be extremely significant. The two cracked, embrittled, maintained, unregulated, uninsured, and uninspected atomic reactors at Diablo Canyon near San Luis Obispo would be a seething radioactive ruin. Oh no, well that's actually close to where G. Edward Griffin lives, so now I'm actually quite concerned. As it carries on, their cores would be melting into the ground. Hydrogen explosions would be blasting the site to deadly dust. One or both melted cores would have burned into the earth and hit ground or ocean water, causing massive steam explosions with physical impacts in the range of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The huge clouds would send murderous radioactive isotopes into the atmosphere that would permanently poison the land, the oceans, the air, and circle the globe again and again and yet again, filling the lungs of billions of living things with the most potent poisons humans have ever created. In 2010, badly maintained gas pipes run by Pacific Gas and Electric blew up a neighborhood in San Bruno, killing 8 people. PG&E's badly maintained power lines have helped torch much of Northern California, killing 80 people and incinerating more than 10,000 structures. We have to remember, the power grid in the United States is crazy outdated by about 60 years at least. So it is actually pretty terrible. It shows, by the way, the impact that humans have and the impact that nature has. Now, humans aren't as important. Nature has a far greater impact on human life, though I guess one could say that humans are nature. But nonetheless, the point is, people put way too much importance on humans versus how nature affects things. And one would have to ask, well, do these nuclear power plants, aren't they ready to go for something like this? I'm sure they're built to sustain an earthquake. Then we look at Fukushima and it's like, oh, wait a second. And by the way, no one's talking about that anymore. And it's still releasing deadly radioactive matter. But with that said, you'd say, could they possibly maintain that? Well, I mean, something I found out recently after these earthquakes is that, well, Las Vegas, Nevada, one of the biggest tourist attractions in the world, the Strip is on a fault line, guys, that could go up to about 7.1, 7.2 magnitude. They can build buildings to withstand that from far away, but can they build these glass buildings like the Cosmo and the Aria and the City Center projects, which are badly built to begin with? and they had to tear down a building because they used the wrong rebar. But nonetheless, could they do anything when a huge 7 magnitude or 6 or even 5 went off right in the middle of the Strip in Las Vegas? Well, I don't know. I feel like I'm not a scientist, or I'm not a geologist. I'm not someone that studies earthquakes. I'm not in tune with all that science. But I feel like that would probably not work out very well for anyone involved, and a lot of people would die. And we saw what happened in Mexico City not that long ago. And I was in Acapulco, Mexico, when a 7.5 hit in early 2018 that caused people around me to be crawling on the floor or on the ground outside crying, and people aren't prepared. So what do? They ran to the ocean. And I'm like, guys, tsunamis are a thing. You might not want to run towards the ocean after this massive earthquake just hit right next to us. You never know what might happen there. I've seen enough of the Thailand footage and the footage of other places where these tsunamis have hit over time, Japan. So I was like, you might not want to do that. And people aren't prepared, and that's what I mean. When it comes down to it, the fact of the matter is, people aren't prepared for these inevitable natural disasters, and when they do hit, no one will know what to do for the most part, except for people here and there that have actually done survival training and stuff like that. People are completely dependent, and they've been made weak and stupid and dependent. And guess who survives these things best? The hunter-gatherer type people, which is what I've gone into in my ancient civilization videos in the past, is that the hunter-gatherers are the ones that survive the longest and continuously perpetuate their lifestyle through thick or thin, because they can actually fend for themselves. Where most people, ask yourself this: if everything went down and stores ran out of groceries in one day, how would you eat? Are you able to grow your own? Are you able to hunt? Do you have guns? Are you able to protect yourself and your family from people raiding you? And obviously most people are going to act good. They're not bad people. They're not going to start killing people. But a lot of people will get desperate, and a lot of bad things will happen. So are you prepared for that? If not, why? Why aren't you prepared for that? I think we could all get more prepared for that kind of thing, because it's a basic truth, reality of humanity, is that these things happen. And we've been able to deal with it for hundreds of thousands of years through ice ages, massive cataclysms. Just thinking of the cataclysms that hit the earth way back in the around the Younger Dryas period. We're talking the whole earth scorched, gigantic rocks hitting the earth, gigantic asteroids that completely flattened much of the earth. Probably the ones that hit the Hiawatha, where they found the crater in the Hiawatha glaciers in Greenland. That's a great example. That basically wiped out, according to most people anyway nowadays. It's been controversial in the past, but it's wiped out all these people, including the Clovis people, to name one case. And I think it was 75% of all mammals in North America. That includes giant sloths and giant camels and American lions and all that kind of stuff. So obviously these things happen, and they've happened multiple times in human history. The difference is, back then, there's a lot more people that were independent and able to take care of themselves and were able to sustain such a thing. When I was in Mauritania, Africa, these people would have sustained anything. They're living in shacks in the middle of the Sahara, and you got to wonder, where are you getting your water? Or these Berber people just wandering in the desert. It's how do you eat and drink things, and how do you not die from your brain melting in the heat? Because it's 140. But these people can handle it, and most people watching can. I'm sure there are many people that are watching that can, but most people that are watching can't. And by the way, this happened. Manhattan goes dark. Major power outage hits NYC on anniversary of 1977 blackout. Exactly 42 years after a massive blackout caused by a lightning strike at an electrical substation plunged New York City into darkness for 25 hours, with looters raiding 1,600 stores and over 1,000 fires set across the city. Manhattan is tonight in darkness. as a widespread power outage has disrupted traffic lights, plunging several subway stations, businesses, and tourist centers all across Midtown and Upper West Side into darkness as night falls. And you know what happens when things get dark in New York? Some shady, nefarious shenanigans happen. But anyway, you get the point. I just wanted to finish this off by saying, again, freedom is responsibility. Responsibility is freedom. Our individual ability to take care of ourselves and dictate what happens in our own life, self-determination, etc. That includes survival. That includes protecting ourselves, protecting our families, having a way to stay alive, survive as long as you can in this crazy world. And don't take anything for granted. But at the same time, fear acts as a stable, healthy way to stay aware and survive, but it also stops people from living their life. Isn't that funny how that works? It allows you to stay alive, but it also stops you from living on the other side of things. And so when it comes down to it, we need to have just enough fear to have concern, to have responsibility and be independent, but not enough fear to actually see these things as it's going to happen at any moment. We have to live our whole life worrying about it. Living your life in fear stops you from living your life, is my point. And so when we hear these things about Yellowstone, when we hear these things about LA and San Francisco, when we're seeing what's happening right now in New Orleans with flooding and hurricane, all that kind of stuff, we have to be independent, but we cannot live in fear. Certain people, certain individuals, certain entities benefit off of the fear of the masses and the dependence of the masses. So don't give them that gift of control over you, over your life, over your mind. Allow yourself to feel free enough to do what you want in your life without being in fear, while always considering the obvious factors that play into humanity on this crazy place we call Earth, and that you need to be prepared for certain things, whether it's other individuals that might do things to you, or whether it's the Earth, which is far more likely, really, to potentially do things to you. Respect the water, respect the land, respect what you're dealing with around you, because it's much bigger than you and much more powerful than you. But you can be the master of this domain, and you can live a long, happy life without having to worry too much, but always being aware of your surroundings. I don't know. I'm just ranting. I'm just thinking, like, it's a good time to talk about these things because there's so many disasters, so many weather events that are all coming together at the same time, causing all these concerns. And I think we need to step back a bit, take a look, realize the concerns, realize how the government's making this a much more dangerous situation, and all that kind of stuff, and realize how FEMA, by the way, comes in and takes advantage of the poor and the disabled and the vulnerable, etc., in these disasters, and stops other people from donating to people so that they have a monopoly on donations while distracting people with long lineups, like I mentioned in my recent video on New Orleans. Realize that, and realize that you have the power to change everything, your surroundings, your immediate surroundings, and you are the change you wish to see, and to not live in fear, but always be responsible. Anyway, that's enough for this video. Until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. Like what you see here at WAM? Don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we're so heavily demonetized and censored and shadow banned. It's getting really bad, folks. If everyone just gave $1 single a month to, say, Patreon or our Subscribestar, where we do subscriber-only content, we could really get out of this rut that we are currently in as YouTube tries to stifle independent media and prop up the mainstream media. This is really important. This is one of the most important times in independent media history for us to say it's now or never. Let's keep moving forward and let's be that change that we wish to see in the world. Of course, there's also our Bitcoin address below as well as on the screen for you to scan if if you please. And of course, we got events coming up. So make sure to check us out at anarchovegas.com. Anarchovegas.com. Use promo code WAM, that's WHAM, for a 10% discount on your tickets. It's on July 19th, 20th, and 21st in, of course, Las Vegas, Nevada. That's anarchovegas.com. Make sure to check us out there and find us on websites like BitTube and Minds, and just try to support independent media, if not myself, any of the other big independent medias out there, to help us continuously bring our message to you free of charge so that we can really change the guard as we move forward into a dramatically polarized, crazy future. Let's try to make it as sustainable as possible. It comes down to you guys. You are the change you wish to see. You guys will help us get through these tough times. So anyway, check out all those links, and until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.